Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dance Teacher Pep Talk. I am your host, Amanda, and I am so glad you are here. This is a space for dance teachers and anyone interested in teaching dance who is looking for motivation and fresh ideas. As teachers, we spend our days motivating and giving pep talks to our students, and now this podcast is a pep talk just for you. We hope that it helps to ignite new ideas and even work through some deep dance-related thoughts before you head into the studio. Thank you for your support, and now let's get into today's episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Dance Teacher Pep Talk. I am back from a short summer break, and I am feeling so excited to share the topics that I have listed to help us prepare for a new season ahead and to just enjoy the season that we are currently in. So I hope you all are having a wonderful summer. I'm sure that we have a bit of rest and also some teaching and summer programs and things like that during this time of year. And so I wanted to keep the podcast going strong so that we can really benefit from different things to help propel us and push us forward to be not only inspiring dance teachers, but inspired dance teachers as well. So today's episode is all about continuing our education. And I know that a lot of the time with continuing ed, sometimes a hefty price tag comes along with that, depending on what we're doing for additional classes, additional degrees, additional conferences, and things like that. And in the past, I had done an episode about books that I love that changed my dance teaching, and it was a really well-received episode. And so I wanted to do something similar today because, as I mentioned in that episode, I am an avid reader, and so I have so many books and resources that I would just love to recommend. And this kind of goes along with continuing ed because we can propel ourselves further as educators and people by just picking up a new book, by listening into a new podcast. And things like that do not cost a whole lot of money. And so if you're looking to expand your thoughts, to get inspired, to work on new ideas during your summer time as you prepare for a new season, a new year of dance ahead, I highly recommend finding the time to either try these books that I recommend or try these resources and just see what it is that you get out of them. And if these resources don't grab you or don't excite you by the sound of them, then maybe there are others out there too, but maybe this episode will start to get you on track towards finding those right places for you. So as I mentioned, continuing ed can be expensive, and there's so much value in that though. When you are putting money towards bettering yourself as an educator, it is such a win-win because you are going to become a better teacher. People are going to be more drawn to take your classes, and you're going to have more to share and more to inspire with. And so yes, if there's a conference out there that you want to go for and you're ready for, go for it. But if that's kind of difficult at this time financially, there's so much that we can still do to help propel ourselves forward. So let's get into my recommendations for some summer reading and summer resources that we can use to help better ourselves as educators. So the last time I did an episode like this, I sort of divided it into categories. And so I did that again just to keep us on track. So today's recommendation for an inspirational self-help, self-progress type of book, self-development type of book is one that I actually just finished reading. And I'm starting off with this one because if you listen to anything in this episode, please let it be this because this book was completely life-changing. I might be a little late to the party on this one because it has been around for a little while, but the book that I am recommending is The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. And I'm going to include all of these titles and information in the show notes, but The 5 a.m. Club, I had heard about on a podcast, and I asked for it for my birthday or for Christmas, and it kind of just sat on the shelf for a little bit just because I didn't feel motivated to pick it up. And this summer, I felt really drawn to it, and I can definitely tell why. Now, the thing is, The 5 a.m. Club as a title is slightly deceiving. Of course, it is going to be recommending you to wake up at 5 a.m. Yes, that is a part of it. But the book and the subject matter itself is so incredible. I'm saying life-changing. And am I going to start trying to become a member of the 5 a.m. club or, putting that into practice? This season of my life may be a little bit difficult to do that, but so many of the practices within the book I already have started to do. And maybe I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. Maybe I'm waking up at 6, but I have found such an incredible change in myself as a person and what I can bring as life lessons and life experiences to my teaching. Because as we get into this episode, you're going to see that a lot of this is not just about dance, it's about the motivation and inspiration we have on dancers to grow as people, not just as dancers. And so I wanted to just read a short passage from the book because it just gives you a taste of what the book is like. And I truly, if I recommend anything in this episode, please let this one be the takeaway. This is the one that I think is going to be a game changer for so many of us. And, as dance teachers, 5 a.m. sounds kind of hard, especially if we're like out really late teaching classes and all of that. But maybe we can find these practices in ways that work for us in our schedule. So here's a passage. If you really loved yourself, you'd relinquish all your feelings of not being good enough to be great and renounce all slavery to your weakness. You'd stop focusing on your deficiencies and celebrate your amazing qualities. Just think about it. There's no person on the planet today who has the unique stack of gifts that you have. Actually, in all of history, there's never been even one person exactly like you, and there never will be. Yes, you're that special. That's an indisputable fact. So embrace the full force of your lavish talent, luminous strengths, and breathtaking powers. Let go of the destructive habit of breaking the commitments you make to yourself. Failing to keep self-promises is one of the reasons so many of us don't love ourselves. Not following through on what we tell ourselves will do so destroys our sense of personal worth and dissolves our self-esteem. Keep behaving like that, and the unconscious part of you will begin to believe you're not worth anything. So there's just a little bit there. But it's so thought-provoking to me because as an educator, that's exactly what I would want of my students. I would want them to always hold on to the commitments that they have in their hearts and to not, self-sabotage their push forward in life and to stay true to their wants and their desires and to just, stop putting things off and start really living the life that you are in. And the book does such an incredible job of showcasing that. The whole premise of this book also really goes into the habits and traits of some of the most successful business people and successful leaders in our world and the things that they do that have helped them get to greatness. And it's just such a good book. Highly, highly recommend. I know that Robin Sharma also has a new book out too. I have not read it, but I'm sure it's just as life-changing and thought-provoking as the 5 a.m. Club. So highly recommend picking that one up. It truly breaks down and details everything that, should be a part of your morning to promote not only a successful day, but a successful life. It talks about how small steps can lead to huge gains. And there's so many other strategies and checklists that you can follow to really help yourself stay on track in this whole mindset of what the subtitle of the book is, owning your morning, elevating your life, So everything within it is really helping you to bring yourself to the next highest place of your being. And I just think it was such a beautiful book. All right, moving on. The next book that I'm going to recommend is a teaching aid book. Now, this is a book that was mentioned in episode 42 with Jill Kreisel, and that was the episode all about how we can bring responsive classroom practices into the dance studio. And the book that was recommended is Yardsticks by Chip Wood. And I had read this book as a part of my college text when going to school for elementary education. And having talked with Jill during the podcast episode, it just really reminded me of how important this is as a resource. It is absolutely vital. It is a child and adolescent development book, and it's really written in a way that is so easy to digest. It doesn't feel like you're reading a textbook. It doesn't feel, heavy or dense. It really breaks down each age group, developmental group, and things like that, and what we should be looking for in terms of cognitive, social, emotional, and physical characteristics within those timeframes of a child. And as educators, this is the thing. I feel like there, especially lately, has been a big shift in the dance world where it's not just about the dance content that we're teaching. It's about how we're teaching it, how we're delivering it, and also the importance of that social emotional learning that happens. And I don't know if it was like a comeback from COVID thing or if it was just something that we've gradually shifted to within the past decade or so, but I'm so here for it. But going into a dance class is no longer about the steps you're learning only. It's about the growth that you're having as a human. So yeah, you're in there learning your dance steps, absolutely. But we have seen from years and years of training the effects that dance has on the building of the personality, the building of the person, the character, and what they carry forward in their life. And if we can facilitate a age-appropriate structured classroom based on psychology and education, I just think, why not? Why shouldn't we be doing that? And it's also really helpful as an educator because like you may want to be bringing these such and such a skills into your classroom. Say it's like an age 8 classroom and you are bringing these skills in. But if you're not teaching it in a way that's developmentally appropriate, the dancers are not going to retain what it is. They might not even be interested in what it is that you're giving because it's how is it being given. So Yardsticks really talks about development. It talks about what to expect for the different age groups. And this could be a book for parents. It could be a book for educators. It could be a book for really anyone who works with children. And truly, truly highly recommend it. And I think it'll help us to see how we're structuring our classrooms and if it's to the benefit of the student or if it's just because this is what we've always done or this is how we always teach. But, I believe if you're walking into a room of 5-year-olds, you're going to have to teach them a lot differently than when you walk into a room of 10-year-olds. Even a 12-year-old to a 15-year-old. Totally different. We can have high expectations, 100%, but we have to be real about the expectations that we are giving to different age groups because the expectations are going to look differently for a 7-year-old than they would a 15-year-old. And how can we best facilitate an environment that fosters their learning and helps them with where they're at? So Yardsticks by Chip Wood is my teaching aid recommendation. And after reading that, if you haven't listened to episode 42, I'll include that in the show notes as well. But it was a beautiful episode with Jill Kreisel about responsive classroom methods that we can shift and use within our dance studio settings. Okay, moving along. So the next category is dance. This dance resource is a DVD. Yeah, like those are still a thing, right? I don't know. Maybe they're not. But if you have the capability of playing a DVD or, playing one in your computer, or maybe you have an external CD drive or something like that. So today's recommendation is actually going to be a throwback to the Broadway Dance Center teaching DVDs. And there are other types of teaching sort of structure videos now on YouTube that are free. But there's something so tried and true about the Broadway Dance Center DVDs. And it's funny because, when I first started teaching, these were something that I would go to really help me to understand structuring my class, safe practices, and things like that. But what is wrong with going back to those? I mean, yes, maybe they're 10 years old, 15 years old, 5 years old, but this is the thing. Stephanie Kemp made a great point in her episode 55, saying we are the stewards. It isn't always about reinventing the material, but about making sure that we're passing down the knowledge of the greats. We didn't make this up. Somebody else did. And so how they are teaching it, the greats. And, I know that goes back before Broadway Dance Center's time, but they have cultivated a space where there are these wonderful master teachers who have put together their knowledge into these DVDs. And, it's so, so important, to think about this, because do you always feel like you're having to reinvent stuff, or are you doing the tried and true? Because when you go back to the tried and true, how does that feel? I love the Michelle Asoff warm-up series, all of the DVDs that Michelle Asoff has. If you pick up a Frank Hatchett Jazz DVD, there is so much there that is rooted in who we are and who we've become. And why not use that to help influence our dancers of today? You know, there are elements of tradition that I feel, shouldn't be present in the dance classroom anymore. They're, practices deemed unsafe, unhealthy, all that. But the thing is we do not have to always be creating that when the foundation of what we love has already been laid out for us by the pioneers. And sometimes revisiting that, we find the creation moves through us even stronger, and our dancers get stronger because we're rooting in foundational work that we grew up with and loved, And I also, on the other hand, believe that advancing with the times is so vitally important. But there are things I feel should be extinct from the dance classroom. Even looking at what was considered best warm-up practices, I think things have shifted greatly in that world, integrating more functional strength for our dancers, things like that. But I always find such a connection when I go back to the start and when I go back to the roots. And like I was saying, the things that you felt good about doing as a dancer, that is going to spark so much in your teaching as well. So if you loved, that era of the Broadway Dance Center DVDs, bring them back out. Find a device to watch them on. Get inspired, because there's so much in there that I think we can really reconnect to in our classroom, and so much growth is going to happen from that. It reminds me of a quote. I cannot remember it, but it kind of comes down to the idea of, the beginner dancer doesn't know much, doesn't know anything. The intermediate dancer feels like they know it all, and they don't even want to dance with the beginners. They're too good for the beginners. But the advanced dancer dances it all and even knows that what is most important is happening within the beginning level. And it kind of it just brought me back to that when I was thinking about the DVDs. And yeah, they might be older, but going back to them and seeing what was there, I just think there's so much value and so much learning in that. And, aside from that, as a resource too, even the music we're using, even, we're always searching. I mean, I am at least always searching on Spotify for new music and all this stuff. But why not just pick up one of the old CDs? You can't go wrong with a Lisa Harris ballet album, or, the Kimbo dance for younger children. And if you don't have these, you may need to search on eBay for them or Amazon. But you know what? At this time, they might not be that expensive to get and to purchase. So if you feel like you're taking a lot of time and energy searching for music, you can really get pulled into that, So stop the search, remember the roots, and just, in a way, make it easier on yourself, because these are the tried and true methods that can propel your students so far, and we don't have to constantly be reinventing. And I know I mentioned too that, continuing ed can be expensive. So picking up a book, even if you're downloading a book from your library app on your phone, there are so many ways that you can progress yourself and push yourself that do not really cost too much money. Even a podcast. There's some amazing podcasts out there, whether it's a dance related podcast or if it's a self-development related podcast. But I have grown so much from just taking that in. My drive to the studio is a lot different by putting on an inspiring podcast than just listening to whatever, I feel ready. I feel prepared, mentally I feel more put together, and I feel like I have more to offer my students, because the growth that I have is something that I hope to then instill in them as well. So today's episode was all about resources and books that I love to help propel our dance teaching even further. And I hope that you found some inspiration in that too. As I mentioned in the episode, I will definitely be including all the titles to these books and resources in the show notes, so that if you want to check back and refer to them, you can. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening to today's episode. I so appreciate your support. If you feel called to share this episode with a friend, I would so appreciate it. And of course, don't forget to follow us on whatever podcast platform you like, and give us a rating or review to help get that message of Dance Teacher Pep Talk out there, so that other educators like ourselves can hear the message as well. So thank you all. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next week.